telling you, that was a crazy shopping spree. Like, a crazy shopping spree. I was at a record store. It was like the ultimate record haul. Being that a fan I am of records, I had to go there. I went there with my father. He and I went there. He called me up. He was just like, hey, there's a big sale on records. You want to go? I'm like, yeah, this is records we're dealing with here. Like, the ultimate experience for music. And I got a bunch, and if it's more than 5 minutes this video, I'm sorry, but if that's the case, I can try and make this in a few parts. Alright, here we go. So, being the Motley Crue fan I am, I had to get Shout at the Devil. Yep, the legendary album that put them on the map. When this album came out, a lot of people thought, this is Motley Crue's debut album. Wrong. It's actually Motley Crue's second album. Their first album, as you know, is Too Fast for Love. For the fans that don't know, that is their first album. This is their second. And mainly people remember this album for the controversy with this pentagram cover. They're like, you can't do that. The people who think you guys are devil worshippers are like, we're not. We're just doing it on here because it's Shout at. Nikki Sixx and Vince Neil, they were on an interview. They were like, look at this. Shout at the devil, not shout with the devil. And they said that's why we put the pentagram there, so that we could be like, shout at war, shout at all the negativity that happens in the world. You know what, I have to agree with them on that. And if you look at other copies, it's just it's actually a kind of like a book, this album cover. If you look at more recent copies of Shout the Devil, it's just this. Got pictures of all four of these guys. Cool, but Mick Mars said it was bogus, he thought. Moving on, we've got some other classics in the world of pop rock, or glam rock. Speaking of Motley Crue for their glam rock, talking about Prince, 1999, 1982 released. Yep, when 1999 hit for real, he appeared on Larry King, and Larry said, he's been telling us to dance and party like it's 1999 for 17 years. And this is the album, 1999. This album he did on his own, like he performed on his own, like played all the instruments, wrote, sang, and did it all on his own. And if you recall there's a scene in The Breakfast Club when Ali Sheedy is sitting, she sits at the table, and she's looking at this cover. And if you actually look closely, this is the very cover that she had, or she was looking at in the movie. And I was watching that, I was like, Prince, I wonder what album that is. Wonder No More. This is the album, 1999, and I have to say, this is probably my favorite picture of Prince and his entire band. Purple Rain wasn't even released yet. This is like before Purple Rain. There was 1999 by Prince, and that we have to respect and admire, and considering this May will be his 60th birthday, had he survived. If he were alive today, this would be a big celebration, and I imagine he'd go on a big tour. And speaking of anniversaries, last year was the anniversary of two Doors albums. Their first album, their self-titled album, and their second album, which is what I have here, Strange Days, which they announced on Dick Clark's show. And this was released in September, just almost a year after their first album was released. The problem I have with albums, sometimes you can't really find the title. This one, you really have to look. It's a bit of a game of I Spy. It's literally right behind this man. And there it is, Strange Days. And you could even see a poster of them. And I was just listening to this just now. It's incredible. It's one of my favorite Doors albums. Now, I'm not one for compilations, but if it's a soundtrack to a movie I like, I will love that album. And that album is the Beverly Hills Cop soundtrack. The first Beverly Hills Cop soundtrack. And there we are. The movie that took Eddie Murphy to the top. Again, not one for compilations, but seriously, a hilarious movie and one of the best soundtracks ever. If you're one for 80s songs, here's your soundtrack, and it's a non-stop dance party. And it's funny too, you could picture all the funny stuff that happens when you listen to that soundtrack.